Hey, I'm Jordan Cooper from Rotogrinders with a walkthrough of our new results database, Resultsdb, powered by FantasyLabs. If you're accustomed to FantasyLabs contest dashboard, much of this won't be new to you, but if you're a long-time user of Resultsdb, you'll see a lot of new improved features for you to test out now when you review your contests. And as I always say on the Rotogrinders pregame show, I use this type of tool every single day to review the contests that I played, how well I played, study my opponents and their exposures. So this is another useful tool in improving your daily fantasy sports play, whether it be NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA. We'll probably come out with the MMA and some other things. There'll be more contests added. This will be in active development, so you will see additions throughout the course of the year to improve your studying ability and even your sweat ability during the slate. And we'll see some of those features also. So I've brought up the NFL slate from January 9th. Which is the last regular season slate, and you could go back in time if you see here in the calendar. You go back in time as far as you want. We have contests from 5 years back. I mean, and this is for DraftKings only. DraftKings has CSV downloads, so we get all of the contest data from DraftKings, and you go back in time to NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, to any date. Any slate, even like we have the main slate here. We have the contests here, the Wildcat, the Slant, the fourth down conversion, and we will be adding most of the popular substantial prize pool contests to this tool. So even like the large field double ups, the mini maxes, if you're a lower stakes player. So you could go through every day. Once the contests lock. Typically, information is updated within 15 minutes or so as the contests go on. Obviously, as the games lock, you will not see exposures from the games that have not started yet. But if you're used to the results DB that we previously had, those update times are now speedier. So you could once all the games lock, you could even look at everything. The night of those contests. I typically do so in the morning when I'm reviewing yesterday's slate, but you could do so while you sweat the games. So we can see here that the normal screen that you bring up, we select the Millionaire Maker for January 9th. And it's going to retrieve all the data, and you're going to see the exposure list. And this is very similar to the screen that we start out with in the old results DB, and it'll basically show you the top lineups and the exposures of all the players, the ownership in all the contests. And then in addition to the exposures here, you see here, D'Onta Foreman was 29.1% owned, Jonathan Taylor 25% owned, Cleveland defense 25% owned. You could obviously filter this by team if you want. You could filter by position, just want to see all the running backs. And you could sort these columns any way you want. You could sort by salary. You could sort by exposure. And then it also shows us 20%, 10%. And this is what was the ownership of lineups that were in the top 20% of the contest, which is typically around the cash line. All the lineups that cashed, and the top 10%. So we can see here D'Onta Foreman was 29% owned. Out of the top 20% of lineups, he was 27% owned, and out of the top 10% of lineups, 26% owned. And obviously, you could tell that depending on how well the player did, comparison to their price, will determine how much more often they were in the top 10, top 5, top 1% of lineups. So we can see here, like someone like Najee Harris was 9% owned, but he only scored 9 points for 7,200, so it didn't appear in as many of the top 10% lineups. While someone like Devin Singletary, you can see here with the color coding, right? Red means bad, green means good. That Devin Singletary was 23% owned, but since he scored 25 points at 6,000, he showed up in a majority of the top 10% lineups. So you can look here for a general overview on the ownership of the players on the slate. And then you see the standings on this side. And you could sort, you could filter by username. I could take a look at for instance, Cheese is Good, Dave Potts, who played this contest. I could look here. I could look just for him. Rosters, right? I could click on his name, and I could see his exposures, right? Out of his 17 lineups, he had 61 players. He had a max ownership of 58.8%, ROI of $55. And you could see here. So you could sort by exposure. You had a lot of Deonta Foreman, a lot of Allen Robinson, George Kittle. With the field, you could sort by field, and you could sort by leverage, like in comparison to the field. Right? The field was 7.9% on Allen Robinson, but he had 41.2% of him, which is a positive leverage of 33.3, or even negative, right? Had very little Cooper Kupp in relation to the field. So you could sort by, you could look at individual people here, and you could use this search box for that. Or you could just click, anyone in there. So we have who won, J. Blake the King, ROI $999,400. He had 150 rosters, 149 of them unique, 130 players. And you can take a look at his exposures. James Conner, David Montgomery, Justin Jefferson. And you could do the same exact thing. You could look at the individual lineups. If you click on the lineups button, right? So you could just scroll through all the lineups that are here. This is also in the leaderboard section as well. So if you click over the leaderboard, let it load, it'll show you all the lineups individually. So you can go through individually to each lineup if you want. So if we go back to the exposure screen, you go to J. Blake the King, right? We could just see his exposures right here. You could filter by position just like before. And if you want to save the users, especially if you're going to be doing this every morning, every day, and you want to study kind of some of the top players or players that fit your style, that you respect, or that you're maybe they employ a strategy that you're not really sure how they're playing, but you kind of want to study it in the future, you could always save them as a favorite. So I could star this. I could look at let's say I could go to Cheese, for instance. If I spell his name right. And let's say I want to save Cheese is Good. I could go click on his, click on there. And then let's say I go to Head Chopper. So I'm going to go to Head Chopper, type it in. Obviously, the larger the contests are, the load time is a little bit delayed, especially when you're searching through 100,000 entries. So he only had 2 lineups. Okay, Head Chopper only played 2 lineups, but I could save him also. And then tomorrow or whatever, I could just go to the favorites. So if I eliminate that and I just click favorites, I could just get J. Blake the King, Cheese is Good, Head Chopper. All users. And then obviously I could unstar them and they go away from my favorites list. Then we could go to compare exposures. So if you want to see here, look, all the players that I starred automatically populate the compare exposure screen. So now instead of seeing them like on this first screen, just one at a time, I can compare them to one another like this. So I could add, let's say, Brick 75. I could add him. I could add Whistles Go Woo. Right? If I find him, the Whistles Go Woo. I could add Petty Theft if he played. Let's see. Petty Theft 89. And I could look across the board of their exposures in their whatever amount of lineups that they played. Obviously, Head Chopper only played 2 lineups, so everything is 50 or 100%. But I can compare one to the other. And I could sort by any of these columns. So if I want to see Brick 75, sort by this. I can just look at him. It's a little bit slow. Up and down, up and down. Go back to the exposure screen. Okie doke. Go back to my favorites. Still the favorites are there. So if I wanted to, let's say, add Brick 75 as a favorite, go to all users, go Brick 75, star him, the whistles go woo. Put his name in. Click his name. I can see all of his exposures. And click there. Okay? I'm going to do this. And now, another thing that you could do in Resultsdb now is look at team stacks and game stacks. And especially in correlative sports. This may not be that applicable in golf or even in NBA. But obviously in NFL, typically you're stacking teams and games, right? Quarterback, wide receiver, right? Or you're playing a running back defense, something like that. Or you're playing two sides of a game, a secondary correlation. A wide receiver from one side of the game and a wide receiver from the other side of the game. Well, you could individualize that right here. So based on this, and we could look at the field ownership of the combination of players. So Tyler Huntley, Mark Andrews was in 3% of lineups. Right? Taysom Hill, Marquez Callaway. Team stacks. Right? We also have Devin Singletary, Buffalo defense. We have just like Deonta Foreman and A.J. Brown, both on the Titans. So you can see the ownership of the combination of these players. And some of them were like three-player stacks. Kyler Murray, Christian Kirk, Zach Ertz was in 1.8% of all lineups in the milli on this slate. 1% owned total in the top 20% of lineups. 0.8% owned in the top 10% of lineups. 0.4% of owned in the top 1%. Obviously, the players that did well are going to appear more likely in the top 1%, like Devin Singletary, Buffalo defense, Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson stacks. So you can go through here, and you can see how owned are the combinations of players. So you go to Arizona, you could filter by team. Because sometimes you could play two players that are like, well, one's 15% owned, the other's 10% owned, and you're like, okay, that isn't that bad, but you find out that they're being played in a lot of combinations together. So maybe the combination is a little bit more owned than you really think it is. So these are team stacks. In addition, you could do game stacks, which obviously include both sides of the game. So the most owned in this contest, secondary correlation, or game stack, is Deonta Foreman with Brandon Cooks. So the running back on one side of the game, the wide receiver on the other. 4% of lineups. We had Jonathan Taylor and Marvin Jones on opposite sides of the game. And we could scroll down and we could see all these correlations, right? Here's a full 3+1 game stack of Seattle at Arizona. Kyler Murray, Christian Kirk, Zach Ertz, with Tyler Lockett as a run back in 0.4% of lineups. Right? Ryan Tannehill, A.J. Brown, Brandon Cooks. Right? And you could filter this by the games. So if I wanted to filter it by, for instance, that Arizona game, I could look here. Right? So Lockett, Ertz across from each other. Then we have Kyler Murray, Christian Kirk, Ertz, and Lockett. And do we have the Metcalf with the Metcalf one? Here's Antoine Wesley. So we could see here Metcalf, Kyler Murray, Christian Kirk, Zach Ertz, DK Metcalf. So based on this, you would see like, wow, the Lockett combination over here was twice as owned as the Metcalf combination of the same type of stack. 21.5 salary in total. This one is 25.6 in salary total. So you could look at these things, the correlations between the players, something that you could not have done in the previous version of Resultsdb. Then we have whatever reports are available for the slate. If you want to see like salary used, how often in the flex position, basically all lineups versus top 20% versus top 10% versus top 1%. If you want to take a look. Duplicates. What lineups were the most duplicated in the contests? This lineup was duplicated 229 times by 227 users, right? Essentially, it was a very cash-looking lineup. Allen, Singletary, Gibson, Cooks, Kirk, Grayson, Higbee, Jaconner, Washington defense, right? Here's one 150 times, but only by one user. So there's obviously someone that had a train or had a dummy lineup in their CSV and just didn't replace it, right? So you could see here. You could look at the duplicates report. What lineups were the most duplicated? You could even use your browser search to search for whatever lineups that you want to look for. And you could do this for any contest. So like we have the 1 p.m. main slate right here, right? You could go like, okay, we go to the Wildcat, right? And we go to the exposures and see, if my favorites, no, some of our favorites didn't play this contest. So you go here. Whistles Go Woo played 125 lineups into the Wildcat. Brick 75 played 3. And you could look at that. Whatever users that you want. We also have the Showdown Contest. So if we go to Showdown on the 9th, so that would have been the Sunday night football game, we have the Luxury Box and we have the big field contest. And you can take a look at the very same things, especially that duplicates, right? We go to duplicates on Showdown. You can really see, look at how many lineups look at how many times certain lineups are duplicated. Did you have any of these lineups? Well, your expected value in these lineups are probably very low. Because if you win first place, you're going to split it like a million times, right? 519 times. So you could search for your own lineups and say, did I play any lineups that were heavily duplicated? And you can go through here. You can see, look at how many lineups are duplicated over 100 times in these contests for the large field NFL showdowns, right? We want the lineups that under 10, under 5, unique, on 1. That's what you'd be looking for. So that's something that you could see now on Resultsdb, as powered by FantasyLabs, on Rotogrinders right now. And it's not just NFL, right? We go to NBA. Right, we click over to NBA, and you could do the same exact thing in NBA. So we're going to go to, let's say the Friday the 14th slate, right? And like I said, there'll be more contests added to these as everything comes out. So like, oh, well, where's the mini-max? We'll be adding the mini-max. Like, oh, where's the $5 zone? As long as it has a substantial enough prize pool, we'll be adding it. Or like the Showtime, the single entry, whatever the biggest single entry, like $100 single entry, we'll be adding it. Just like in the NFL, like the Spy and the Power Sweep, like those things will be added. So if we go to the fadeaway, the large field GPP on DraftKings for the main slate, we could do the same exact thing. Maybe go to our favorites list. Oh, look, okay, Head Chopper put in 1 lineup. Brick 75 put in 150. So if you wanted to compare exposures, right, it automatically populates your favorites in here, and you could add what other players you want to compare it to. So just like we saw for NFL, you could do the same thing in NBA. Same thing even in team stacks. Even though in NBA the correlation of players isn't really a big deal. You could see, did multiple players on a similar team, or game stacks, which is both sides of a game. LaMelo Ball and Robin Lopez in this contest combined was in 3.4% of all lineups. Christian Wood, Harrison Barnes. Christian Wood, Tyrese Halliburton. And you can take a look here. Even though in NBA doesn't matter as much. And you could do the same thing with the duplicates. We could see here that 4 users put in very, very similar lineups 141 times. Here's a 37-player train. Obviously, I don't know, they just put in a lineup a bunch of times. See what lineups are duplicated. So you could do the same thing in NBA. You can see the leaderboard as well, right? And it even shows in the view lineup section, like lineup trends. Like low-owned player, team stack, game stack. In NFL, it'll show if you had a run back, if you didn't have a run back, those types of dynamics in the lineup. So if you wanted to see a little highlight of that, okay? This works for MLB as well. So let's go to MLB. Let's go to back in August, like August 20th. Let's see, a Friday. Typically they play big slates on Fridays, right? 14 games, right? We'll go to the medium eights, the check swing. That was the big contest that day. 29,000 entries. Okay, you could do the same thing here. Here, filter by team, filter by position. We see the pitchers here, right? We want to compare exposures. And as before, anyone that's in your favorite list automatically gets added to the compare exposures. Now, you could obviously click these off if you want, right? You want to click off Whistles Go Woo, click off Whistles Go Woo, right? So you see the field exposure versus what they have, right, of each individual player. And you can filter by team, you can filter by position. Now, obviously in MLB, team stacks matter a lot more, right? So looking at combinations of 2 players together in the same lineup. So if you filter by team, like Arizona, We can see here the 5-player stack like this, the 2-player stack like that. Let's see, what was a chalky team on this slate? Let's see. That isn't a starting pitcher. It looks like the Cardinals, maybe? Cardinals, the Yankees. So let's take a look at the Yankees. So we can see here, like the top 5-man. We could even sort, I believe, if we go by team. No, we can't sort by... Okay, we can sort by players. So obviously 6 means it goes with the pitcher. So we go through, and we go through. We could scroll down. And we go to the next page. You could obviously sort by page here. And we get the 5-man stacks. So we can see here, the top owned 0.2% of the entire field had Trevor Story, C.J. Cron, Elias Diaz, Connor Joe, Garrett Hampson. Right, so you could see all the 5-man, 4-man team stacks. And features like this will be actively developed throughout the course of the next year or two. So hopefully we can highlight just by team, make it a little bit easier. Game stacks, I don't know. Game stacks really aren't that prevalent in MLB. You know, who cares if you play both sides of a game? But if you wanted to look at that, that's fine. Same thing for duplicates. You want a duplicates report of that. And obviously you could switch from different contests, right? You could go to Mega 8s, Medium 8s, Feds Buster, and we'll be adding other contests as time goes on. This is, you know, we're releasing this out to the public right now, and things will be updated and developed actively. We go to NHL, very similar dynamic in NHL. So if we go to NHL, do we have any NHL contests in here? Okay, on the 14th, there's a 3-game slate. I don't play NHL, but I could take a look. Kick save, the forecheck. You could do the same exact thing. It's no different. Compare exposures, right? Jesus Good and Whistles Go Woo played some. You can see them here. Team stacks. Obviously, you're playing lines. So this Roop Hintz, Jason Robertson, Joe Plavleski line was heavily owned and didn't do very well. Doesn't look like. I'm not sure if the information has been updated for NHL. But the same exact thing. Same exact features for all sports. Then we have golf. Okay, golf has one additional little feature that you may like. So same thing in golf. Look at the field exposure compared to the top 20%, compared to the top 10%, compared to the top 1%. Filter by username. Here's a stack seeker. Right? And we'll be adding this stack seeker for the other sports. So if you want to select 2 players, right, and see what 2 players, what 3 players. So you're selecting exactly the 3 players. Instead of the stack reports from the other sports, like you'll be seeing this in the other sports also, where, hey, you want to see how many lineups had LeBron James plus D'Angelo Russell? Like, it'll be, and the way to find it in the other screens is a little bit harder. With the stack seeker, it'll give you a little report, player exposures and matching lineups. So you see 19 lineups had Russell Henley, Taylor Gooch, Corey Connors in it, right? Russell Henley Gooch is in 8.92% of lineups. Maybe you want how about Cameron Smith and Joel Damon, right? And you can see here what lineups, 40 lineups in this whole field of 800 entries, right? We go to the biggest contest. Let's go. The flop shot. Right? You could do the same thing. Henley Connors. Who had 5.61% of lineups had Henley Connors in it. So that's the stack seeker. Then you also have the live scoring. So you could use this as a sweat tool. Right? This is live DFS scoring. Obviously it's not live now, right? This is from last week's event. But this is updated in near real time. Obviously, when obviously the PGA, scoring gets updated through their API, and you'll see it's basically a live scoring dashboard of the current leaderboard and the scoring for round 1, round 2, right, as it goes on, and the DK points will change, right? Field, what they're owned, right? You see here the field percentage, right? See the scoring summary. right? And if you want to limit the player list, you could add, right? Let's say you only wanted to see, let's see, do we have, I don't know who played, right? You could put whatever name you want there. Like let's say you were Brick 75. It'll only show rostered players, right? Or not show roster. You can uncheck or check. So if you, let's say you only play a couple of players, you're only playing a pool of 20. Well, it makes it easier. Just type in your name, your username, and then make sure it says only show roster players, and then you could use this screen and just look at it the whole weekend, right, for the 4 days, and see the scoring as it happens, and how this leaderboard goes up or down. But all the same features exist in PGA, right? We even have this made cut percentage, all lineups versus salary distribution. You can compare exposures just like you could anywhere else. You can see the leaderboard just like you can everywhere else and go lineup by lineup. Compare exposures and everything. Like I said, this is only for DraftKings. DraftKings offers the CSV downloads publicly. And you go to, I mean, we could go to dates all the way in the past. So like I could go to NFL, and let's just see if we have this loaded in. So if you wanted to go like all the way back, let's see, can I go way back? What was last year? 2021. I go to October 11th, right, or something like that. I'm trying to find the day that I won, that I won a bunch. Slant. Let's see. Did I win the slant this week, or was it the week before? The 18th. Yeah, there you go. Here's my big winning week, right? In 2020, when I won the slant, right? You go all the way, but look, I went all the way back then, right? I could take a look at my lineups, my exposures. It could save me, right? I could save myself. So I could always compare exposures with myself here, right? I could look through and go, okay, here are all the players that I'm studying. If I don't want to look at someone, I could always, X them out. And then compare my exposures to other players that I want to look at. You aren't necessarily ones that you respect or whatever, but you could save them. That's what I like a lot about this new contest dashboard for Resultsdb. Is that, on a day-to-day basis, especially like in a sport that you play every day, like NBA, it's like, oh, I want to study 20 different players. And it's like, oh, just save them to your favorites list, and they're always there. So you don't have to type them in 20 times again. And you can go back as far as we have data for, right? I went back to October 2020, and it was there for NFL. And we'll be adding other sports. I'm hoping MMA. I play MMA. And we're going to add other slates, probably the afternoon slate, other contests here. So if you play the mini-max, if you play double-ups, like, we will have those contests. So this is the first release of the new Resultsdb, the results database, powered by FantasyLabs on Rotogrinders. And this is what you should be using every day. It's free. It's free. You don't even have to sign up. You don't even have to get a premium membership. And you should use this tool every day to study your own play, study other sharp players' play, compare your lineups to their lineups. Even if you don't play some of these contests, and go, well, what did the sharp players play in the high stakes contest? Right? Comparing, the ownership at the high stakes versus the ownership at the low stakes, ownership in the small field contest versus ownership in the large field contests. You could learn a lot of things. Like, oh, a lot of these sharper high stakes players played these types of lineups. And in low stakes, they didn't play those types of lineups, so one may be sharper type lineups than the other. There's one way that you could improve your play just simply by studying other players every single day, and this is what I use. Right now, the new Resultsdb. But I will look at this every day that I play. I look at Resultsdb, typically the morning after. No, I'm not going through 3 hours of this, although you can. Typically going, okay, what did my lineups look like? And what did the lineups of players that I respect kind of look like? Were they similar enough? right? I had a lot of this guy. Did they have a lot of this guy? Oh, yeah, yes. A lot of people went that way, right? Did people pay up here and go down there to be contrarian? Oh, yeah, a lot of people did that. Or sometimes you find out that it's like, oh, I built lineups like this that were highly contrarian, and many of the sharper players played much more chalkier lineups. And it's like, okay, maybe I played a little too contrarian. Maybe I didn't play contrarian enough for the contest that you're in. But this is one tool. This is probably the best learning tool that you will have to improve your daily fantasy sports play. So I implore you, we have this new upgraded version coming out right now and actively developed with more new features that you could find on Rotogrinders at rotogrinders.com/resultsdb. And if you have any questions about any of the options, any of the features here, and good ways to study your lineups as well as your opponents, feel free to join me, at 11 o'clock in the morning on weekdays on the Rotogrinders YouTube channel, on rotogrinders.com for the DFS pregame show. And ResultsDB is a staple of my show. We always go through stuff nearly every morning, so feel free to show up and join us in the YouTube chat. Ask your questions if you have anything you need more clarified on how to use this tool better. But I'm proud to announce the new upgraded version of Results Database, ResultsDB, powered by FantasyLabs, on Rotogrinders.com.